All right, sorry for the delay, everybody. I thought I had it set up, but apparently I didn't set up quite right. Mine it said October 9th, but on there. So hopefully everybody is on here. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and let me know if you're on here. That way, just I can have a confirmation. Just go ahead and put I can see you or something like that in the message thing where you ask your questions. All right. So Mark says it's good. Thanks, Mark. All right, good to go. All right, so let's go ahead and I'll get started here with Paul K. Let me scroll down. There we go. So Paul K says, I've been battling coming over the top for 50 years. Are there any drills in the TSG system that will help me with that bad habit? So as far as the TSG system, there's nothing that specifically tackles in over the top, but there are things that help you not to come over the top. So one of those things is the stable fluid spine. So in the stable fluid spine course, what we're talking about is being nice and angled away from the target address. So nice and angled away address, and then nice and stable, staying angled away at the top. And then as we're coming into contact, we're getting more angled away as we're coming into contact. So in that 20-degree range, somewhere in there. So if you are vertical at the top of the swing, let's say your spine angle is toward the target, you're like this, you're really vertical. I see this all the time. If you're in that kind of position, then you don't really have any space to let this club to come down from the inside. You're going to end up usually coming over the top for a couple of reasons. One's because of that space, and the other is because your shoulders are at an angle to where you want to come out like that. It's going to make you want to come more out like that. So I look at your spine, make sure that you're nice and angled away at address, and then nice and angled away as you go up to the top. And then as you're coming into impact, you're going to be about 20 degrees angled away as you're coming into impact. And that's going to allow you to swing from the inside. It's going to give you that space to be able to swing that club from the inside. If your spine angle looks good, everything looks great there, then you're just going to want to work through our Never Slice Again course. That's just a bonus course that we have where everything that you do in that course is to help you to swing more from the inside and close the face, which is what you need to do to fix a slice. That's an over-the-top type motion. So I'd recommend going to that course and working through those drills as well. To get to any of the courses, whether it be the Stable Fluid Spine or the Never Slice Again course, you just want to click on the house icon at the top. Looks like a little house. If you click on that, that's going to take you to the home page. If you scroll down on the home page, you'll see the Never Slice Again course progress. Below that is all the courses in the website, 20 or so courses. The Stable Fluid Spine course will be toward the top. That Never Slice Again course is probably going to be in the middle somewhere of those. Click on there and get started working through the videos there. But look at your swing on first on camera to make sure your spine angle is good. And if it is, then work on the Never Slice Again course. If it isn't, then you'll want to make sure that your spine is nice and stable there. It's not only going to help you with your over the top, but it's going to help with everything as well, consistency and all that good stuff. All right. All right, so Mark B said, in yesterday's office hours, you demonstrated how to see if your swing plane is too steep by extending the shaft line to the ground. You said it should hit the ground outside of the golf ball. When you demonstrate a shallow swing plane, it appears your shaft line will be way outside the ball. How far outside of the ball should it hit? 1 to 3 feet, 10. Thanks again. So that's a great question. How shallow should you actually be in your transition? That's a fantastic question. So basically, the easiest way to kind of think about it is at the golf ball, to have that at the golf ball or to have it a little bit outside the golf ball. So probably no more than a foot. So I'll demonstrate kind of what I was talking about yesterday. So everyone else who maybe wasn't here yesterday can understand what we're talking about here. So essentially, when I'm looking at whether someone is coming down steep or not, what I do is I'll take this swing and I'll pause it at this point in the downswing. So when that lead arm is parallel to the ground, I will pause it right at that moment. And in general, if this club is the butt end of the club, if you're to draw a line down this shaft, down the butt end of the club, this should be pointing at the golf ball or a little bit outside the golf ball. So like I said, I'd say no more than a foot, because that would be overshallowing it. We'll talk about that in a second. But basically, that's a good place to be, because that means you're not going to have to make any compensations to get this club to be on plane in the downswing. If you're steep like this, so now I'm coming down, my butt end of my shaft is pointing inside the golf ball. You can clearly see that. Now what I'm going to have to do is, well, I don't have many options. Basically, my only option to hit a good shot or to get this club to come down on plane is to kind of stand up and drop the club underneath so I can swing like that. My other options, which aren't going to be very good, are to kind of continue to come down steep and over the top, or basically just to stick this ball in the, or this club in the ground right behind the ball, and we don't want to do that. So anywhere at the golf ball to a little bit outside the golf ball is going to be good. Now, it may have looked like I was way, way outside the golf ball because of the camera angle or something like that, because this isn't exactly the camera angle that you're going to want to use. You're going to want to be right down your toe line. You're going to want to be at about waist level. And this is too close as well. You want to be far away enough that you can get the entire swing in camera. I'm in my office here, so I don't have a ton of space to be able to show all of that. But that's basically what we're looking for there. So if you are in that area, you're going to be able to stay in your posture. You're not going to have to make any compensation to get the club to come back down on plane. Now, if you're over-shallowing it, if let's say you're coming down and you're in this area, it happens sometimes. I see it sometimes. It's pretty rare. And usually it comes from people who have worked on trying to get the club to shallow, and they've just overdone it, and they're kind of in this area. Well, if you're in this area, now you've got to make another compensation to get this club back down on plane. That usually involves kind of taking your elbow and your shoulder and doing something like that in that action, and then you swing like that. And that's not what you want to do either, because that's you're going to chop down into the ball. You're typically going to flip because you're going to go like that, and it just leads to poor golf shots. So anywhere, if you pause when that lead arm's parallel to the ground, having that club to be anywhere at the golf ball or a little bit outside the golf ball, about a foot. So you can see where that's pointing. It's about a foot, and that would be at the golf ball right there. That's going to be ideal where you want to be with it. And if you want to work on getting the club to shallow out properly, there's lots of videos on the website that help with that. You can search any video easily. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a little search box. If you click in there and just search the word shallow, you're going to find tons of videos for shallowing out the club. And also, the shallowing the club, that's what the move course is all about. That's part of what the move is basically, is shallowing out the club and getting the club face to square earlier. Doing those two things together is what the move is, and that's what all tour players do to help them get some good forward shaft lean and things like that. All right. So Jim S says a couple of videos, the left shoulder trick and the whip through with the right and left arms are both focused on the driver. Do these apply to other clubs as well? So yeah, those both apply. Excuse me, those both apply to other clubs as well. Basically, any club you're wanting to get some good speed with and to have some proper swing mechanics with. A lot of the drills and stuff, or a lot of the videos, Clay doesn't demonstrate with every single club. Usually, you can assume that it is with with all clubs that you're taking a full swing with. The only times when you wouldn't want to necessarily assume that is if Clay is using a driver and he is talking about hitting up on the ball and launching the ball, because that's really the only big difference between hitting an iron shot and hitting a driver. Is with a driver, the ball's up on a tee and you're trying to hit up on it. Whereas with an iron shot, the ball is on the ground, it's on the turf. You've got to hit down on it in order to get ball first contact. So that's really the only big difference there. So as long as what we're talking about, whether it be letting the club whip through or how you're using your left and your right hand in the swing, as long as that is not specific to hitting up on the golf ball, which it's not, then it's not going to be specific to the driver. So that's basically the only real big difference there. But thanks for the question, Jim. I know that can be confusing at times for sure when we use one club throughout the whole video, and it kind of makes you think, well, am I doing this with all my clubs, or is it just the one? So yeah, just it's safe to assume that it's all the clubs, unless he's specifically talking about, just like with irons, right? If Clay's got an iron video and he's talking about hitting the ball first, getting that ball first contact, and then taking a divot, obviously that doesn't apply to the driver, right? So unless you're hitting it off the ground to a certain extent, but any shots off the turf, you're going to be wanting to hit down on the ball. Any shot that's elevated on a tee, way up on a tee. Now irons, typically you'll tee down so that you can have a similar shot to what you would have off the turf. But you could hit up on those and launch your irons as well. So, but it's typically not the best way to hit them. All right. So we had the whole. So Al P says, can you talk about trailing elbow tendonitis and treatment? So I can't really talk about treatment. I'm not a doctor. You're going to want to talk to your doctor about that. But from what I understand, rest is really the best thing for it. As far as what causes that, so typically when we're talking about trailing elbow, so he's talking about right here, I would assume, is where you're feeling. This is where we call golfer's elbow. Tennis elbow is usually on, the furry side of your arm. Tennis balls are furry. That's the easiest way to kind of remember that. So the furry side of your arm. Golfer's elbow is more on the bare side of your arm. Golf balls aren't furry, so that's easier to understand. So if you are going like this, you can feel how that muscle kind of hardens. Whereas if you're like this, it's soft. And then on the other side, if I go like this muscle is soft. And if I go like this, it's hard, right? So that kind of tells you which kind of movement it is. So typically what's causing tendonitis generally is just flat out overuse. So even if you are not flipping the club, like I'm going to talk about in a minute, you can still get it if you're just hitting a ton of range balls and practicing a lot. Now, you're going to be more likely to get it with less reps if you are doing this flipping motion with the trail hand. So if you're coming into impact and you're doing this motion right here, very, very hard through impact. So this is how you're squaring up the face, is by really pushing through with that trail arm. So if you look at your swing on video and you see at contact that this trail arm here or this wrist is pretty flat, that means that you're really pushing through and squaring up the face. And you're going to be susceptible to some tendonitis here if you overuse that and overdo that. So to fix that, what you want to do is get to where you are turning the handle down and squaring up the club face by turning the handle down so that you can get forward shaftly. If you look at all tour players, basically what you're going to see at contact is something like this. You're going to see how that lead wrist is flat to slightly bowed. You're going to see how this trail wrist is more in a bent back position there at contact. It's going to be more like that. So that's the move course. That's working through the move course. And also the straight line release course is part of that as well. We have the pet the grass drill and the straight line release where we talk about we're coming in and we're petting the grass as we're coming through, and then we're releasing out in front. It's that same kind of feeling. But the move course is what allows you to get this club face squaring up earlier in the swing and get you to where you're shallowing up the club as well, so that you can come stay in your posture and come into impact in this kind of position right there. So maybe we're working on the move once you feel like once you've recovered. But like I said, as far as treatment and things like that are concerned, we're just not qualified to give you any advice on that. Legally, we're not supposed to actually. So I'd recommend talking to your doctor about that to get you the proper treatment for it. So Al, I wish I could help you more with as far as treatment and stuff like that, but I'm just not able to. All right. So here we go. Got some questions. So Stephen B says, I am new to the program doing the 20-minute distance fix. In between my range sessions, what drills would you recommend with my Orange Whip training aid? We don't really have any drills for the Orange Whip. I would just recommend, just working on the same drills. If you have some extra time in between range sessions, I would recommend if you're just trying to work on distance, then I would recommend just doing the more of the drills. If you're wanting to work on some of the system, you can do that as well. The orange whip, I'm not a huge fan of the orange whip. Honestly, I'm not really sure how it even helps that much. I've never really used it, and I've never really heard of anybody having success using it. So not a big fan of it, but I would just use it basically to swing it as hard as you can, doing more of the neural adaptation and things like that in between if you want to. But it's not necessary. You don't have to spend a ton of time at the driving range. That's why it's called the 20-minute distance fix. It's twice a week. You're going to get huge gains working at twice a week. So that's what I'd recommend, and I would spend your other time, working on other stuff to improve your game. But as far as orange whip, I don't really have any drills for that. Sorry, I just don't. It's not one of those training aids that I'm a big fan of, so I don't really know any drills that would help or they are good with it. So Jim S says 2 recent videos, left shoulder trick. So Jim, I just talked about that. Hopefully you were here for that. If you weren't here, we archive these every single time. So if you go to the office hours at the top of the page, let that menu expand, and then you go to office hours highlights. If you scroll down below all the office hours highlights on that page, you'll see where all the office hours are archived. There's a huge playlist of them. You can watch those there. So I try to get them on there within a half hour after we're done. So we started a little bit late today because there was a mess up in the page. But basically, I'll be on here until about 10:15. So by about 10:45 a.m., I should have this week's office hours archived, and you'll be able to watch it there. All right. So Lee J says, "Hi Q, I'm struggling to initiate my turn on the downswing. Maybe open left foot a bit." Yeah, that could definitely help. If you are basically if you're squared off with your foot, that can make it a little bit more difficult for you because you're going to tend to maybe want to slide instead. So I like to open up my foot because I have terrible internal rotation on my lead leg, actually my trail leg too, which makes it difficult for me to open up my body. So I really have to open up my foot. That can definitely help. The main thing that you're probably struggling with is your weight shift. If you're having trouble getting that downswing started or getting everything going, you probably need to work on your weight shift and getting a better weight shift. The best drill for that is the step drill. So with that step drill, you're starting with your feet together, and your feet are together here. You go up to the top and you step forward and you swing through. That's basically how it works. So it's going to help you to get that downswing initiated. So to find that step drill, it's actually very easy to find. It's in several videos on the website. We have it in our 20-minute distance fix as well. It's called the sumo step drill in there. It's basically the same drill. But the video that I like it in, and it's got a lot of great other great information in it, is our how to start the downswing video. And it really pertains almost to exactly to what you're asking here. So I think that would be really good for you. But the best way to find that is just to go in the upper right-hand corner. There's a search box there. It says search this website. And it's got a little button next to it that says search. If you type in there downswing and then click the search button, it's going to give you some search results for all kinds of videos that have the word downswing in it, which is going to be a lot, by the way. But the third one down, unless it's kind of changed a little bit, but the last time I checked, it was the third one down. It's called How to Start the Downswing. It's got some yellow lettering in the thumbnail of the video. That's the one that I really like, that shows the step drill and also has some other great information. So I highly recommend that one to give you. That's going to give you some extra information there that I think will help you. And also that's going to demonstrate that step drill so you can work on initiating that downswing a little bit better. All right. So Mark B says, is the release a conscious move? I get questions like this all the time where someone asks me, am I consciously doing this? Am I actively doing this? Am I, and things like that. And the answer to the question is basically, if you look on camera and you're not doing it, if you're naturally doing something else, then you're going to need to consciously release the club, in a different way. Basically, the release, if you are releasing the club early and you want to release the club later, you're going to need to be doing things consciously to make that happen. Now, if you're you're looking on camera and it's just a natural movement, it's second nature, and you're seeing that you're releasing the club properly out in front, then that would be an unconscious move. It's second nature. So basically what it comes down to, if you look on camera and you see that you're not doing something, if you want to do it, then it's going to need to be a conscious move in order to make that happen. And once you do it enough times to where it's ingrained, it's second nature, then it becomes an unconscious move. It's just like, I equate it to learning how to type. I'm sure people who've been on the office hours before, I use this analogy a lot. But basically, if you're learning how to type, initially, right, you're pointing and pecking, and you have to consciously look at every single letter, and because you don't know where all the letters are, because you don't know how to do it. It's not second nature to you. So if you get to where you're learning how to type, and you're learning where to put your fingers, and you're memorizing where the keys are, and then eventually you get to where you're typing like 100 words of movement, it becomes an unconscious movement. It becomes a lot easier. You're not thinking in terms of individual letters. You're thinking in terms of words and sentences. You don't even remember. Like if you type a long sentence, you're not even going to remember typing the word that's in the middle of it, because it was an unconscious movement, because you've trained yourself to do that. So that's basically, like I said, I get that question a lot. Is it a conscious? Is it an active? Am I actively doing this? And do I have to think to do this? I was like, well, if you're not doing it, then yes, you are going to, until you do it so many times that it becomes second nature. So if you look on camera and you are releasing that club early, then, or not releasing it at all and just dragging that club through there, then you're going to need to consciously think, okay, I have to release this club, until you do it so many times that you don't have to think about it anymore. So Thabo M says, hi, I'm struggling with my backswing and cannot turn. The power turn is eluding me. So I can talk about some tricks. It's hard to say exactly what might be going on with your swing, Thabo, without seeing it. But I can talk about some tricks that can help you to basically open things up a little bit. So the first thing that I would do is I would look at your feet. So at address, what you want to do, if you are squared up like this, your feet are very squared up, then it's going to be tough to turn. You're gonna, and my hip just actually popped doing that, but yeah, it's gonna be hard to turn. So if I open my feet up a little bit, that's gonna make it a lot easier for me to turn. The reason for that is that when I'm turning my hips, my leg is internally rotating. I'm internally rotating on my hip here. So if I have a limitation here in my hip and I have my feet squared off, then I'm going to limit my hip turn. So in order to open that up, I can open up my foot, which allows me to more freely turn my hips. So that'd be the first piece. The second piece is going to be lifting up this trail heel, getting this heel to come up off the ground. If I keep this heel on the ground and I got my foot opened up, I can get a little bit more hip turn if I get that heel coming off the ground, because that's usually where I see people who struggle with this, struggle with the power turn, is because they don't turn their hips. They're afraid to kind of turn their backside to the target because it just doesn't feel comfortable, or they don't like to turn their backside or their back to the golf ball. It feels uncomfortable. So it's just a matter of getting out of your comfort zone, working on those couple things, and getting that freed up. Because really, if you look at a tour player, your average tour player has about 120 degree shoulder turn. It's actually a little bit less than that, but I use 120 degrees just to make the numbers really, really simple. So 50 degrees of that on average is coming from the hips. So that's just the separation of basically my feet to my hips. It's this right here. That's 50 degrees, what you see with your average tour player. And then another 50 degrees is coming from the separation of my hips to basically my torso. My thoracic spine is doing most of that. That's your upper spine. Your upper spine can move like this. Your lower spine is more of a stable, is more stable. It's not going to have a lot of turning, but your upper spine that's when you're going to see where you're getting most of the turn from. And that's where that 50 degrees mostly comes from. So if you're getting 50 degrees from your hips, then 50 degrees from your torso, the rest of it, so that's 100 degrees, the rest of it's coming from the protraction and retraction of your shoulders. So what that means is basically if I were to have my chest pointing straight forward here, and then I protracted my lead shoulder. So protracting means that my shoulder blade is moving away from my spine. Retracting would be my shoulder blade moving toward my spine. And you can see I have my chest pointed straight forward. I'm going to protract my lead shoulder, retract my trail shoulder. And you can see I've gotten about 20 degrees of rotation there in my shoulders from that. So that's the three places where it comes from. So you have to look at through your swing, where are you seeing the limitations? Almost always it's this hip turn right here. You're just not turning the hips. So get that back turning to the target. Typically the protraction and retraction of the shoulders, that happens. That's a natural thing. And typically the turning of the torso is fairly good, but it's almost always in the hips. So I would look at your hips first and make sure that your hips are turning away 45 degrees. So one thing that you can do is a good feeling to have, and this is in one of the videos in the 20-minute distance fix, is to feel like your belt buckle here is turning away from the golf ball as much as you possibly can. So that's what I'd be doing there. I'd be working through that catapult drill in the 20-minute distance fix. It's a very, very good drill. It's got some great feelings in there to help you get just kind of a quick power turn course. But just the power turn videos in and of themselves are really good. But doing the things with your feet, allowing your feet to open up a little bit, that's going to help you open up the hips. Allow the heel to come off the ground a little bit. That can open up things. There's nothing wrong with taking your heel off the ground. Look at Francesco Molinari, right? He was thinking about retiring. He was going to retire, and then he decided he was going to work on his game a little bit and try to get some distance. And it completely changed his career. He started lifting up his lead heel. He does it on wedge shots, and it really helped him to get some distance because he's always been a great ball striker. He just wasn't a very long hitter, so he couldn't really compete with guys that were driving it 50 yards past him. So he got a little bit more distance, and then he was able to compete a lot better. So he did that by lifting up that trail heel, or excuse me, that lead heel, which allowed him to get a bigger turn and to be able to create more club head speed so that he could hit the ball further. So absolutely nothing wrong with that. Even doing it on wedge shots is completely fine. It's a total myth that you have to keep your feet totally on the ground. So I'd be looking at that. That catapult drill is a very, very good one from the 20-minute distance fix. To get to that drill, it's very, very easy. If you click on the instruction tab at the top, that will just hover your mouse over it, actually, the instruction tab. It'll expand a menu. That very first option on there, that's the 20-minute distance fix. I believe that catapult drill that's going to be all the shoulder turn range of motion stuff. That's going to be in week 1, I believe. I would just recommend going through the course in general, especially if you're looking for some distance. But you can start there and just do that drill if you want. But if you want to go through the entire course, do the quick start. Start in there, listen to the neural adaptation, kind of a podcast thing, and then go through the week 1 stuff. We're seeing huge results from people going through the 20-minute distance fix. I actually have several students that I'm working with one-on-one in unlimited swing reviews. They're seeing huge results doing the 20-minute distance fix. So if you'd like to work with me and work through the course, I'll be happy to help you out just to make sure that you're on track along the way. I offer an unlimited swing review program. I believe I might have some spots available right now. If I don't, make sure to join my waiting list. But to get to there, you'll just want to go to the top of the page there where it says work one-on-one with a Tuskegee golf instructor. Do that learn more. Click on that learn more, and it'll take you to the page where you can see what swing reviews are all about. You can also see an example of what a swing review may look like. And then also, if you're ever on any page, if you just click get a review at the top of the page, if you leave this page and want to get back to it, if you click that get a review at the top of the page there as well, that'll take you to the same place. So if you have any questions about swing reviews, I'll be happy to answer any questions about those as well. So that was. So David C says, Q, any suggestions for curing the yips? So David, can you be more specific on exactly where your yips are at? Is it chipping, putting, full swing? Let me know. Give me a little bit more information there on exactly where the yips are. All right. So Al P, who I believe is the one earlier asked about the tendonitis, says, thanks. It seems that if impact has a lag position, that we should set up with the club in a lag position. I have tried this before and it seemed to help. Sometimes it won't make any difference. You're going to see a lot of people on tour, and I think basically what Al is saying here is, if we're coming into contact when we're like this, we want to be in this kind of position, then we should be set up basically in this kind of position right here. And that doesn't necessarily always mean, just because you're set up like this doesn't mean that you can't come into contact like that. In fact, I see that all the time. I have students that have very, very strong grip, big hand press forward, and they're coming into contact like this. I see that all the time. So it only really matters what's going on at contact. Your setup and where you have your hands in position usually doesn't make that big of a difference. That being said, it doesn't mean that it can't make any difference. So what I would recommend doing is, just take some swings with each position. Set up here and see if that helps you get in a better impact position. Because the thing to understand as well is the impact position. We're not trying to get in the same position at impact as we are at address. I know logically it would make sense to do that. Logically it would, because at address, if we're set up with forward shaft lean and everything is squared up, it's perfect. It would make sense that I would want to come down and get right back into that position. Now, you can hit good golf shots doing that, but you're not going to have a lot of power. It's going to be very, very difficult to release that club out in front. You're just going to have trouble with that. Typically, if you look at the difference between an address position and a impact position, at address, I would just recommend being nice and relaxed. Let your arms hang down. And that's basically where you want to be. And at impact, your body is going to be opening up. So your body is opening up, your momentum, at impact, about 75-80% of the pressure that you're putting into the ground should be in this lead foot, because you've got momentum moving in this direction, and that's helping you to open up your hips. At address, you're typically going to be pretty balanced, about 50-50 pressure distribution between each foot. And if you set up like this and it helps you to get into a position like this at contact, then that's fantastic, but it usually is not the case. So the body's usually opening up. We're usually lower to the ground. So our chest and everything are lower to the ground because our hands have gotten lower to get this forward shaft lean position. And that allows us to release that club out in front. So I would just recommend getting into a relaxed address position. And if you find that having that forward press or that forward shaft lean at address helps you to get it at contact, then that's a great thing to do. That's completely fine. All right. So Dennis G says, played in heavy wind yesterday. Can you review adjustment for keeping the ball down in a headwind? So what I'd recommend doing is just taking take more club and choke down on it. Because what happens is, what you want to do in windy conditions is you want to keep the spin down. Because if you're hitting into the wind, or even with the wind behind you, if you have a lot of spin on it, the wind's going to affect that even more. The wind's going to make it spin even more, and then the ball's going to go. If you hit into the wind with a lot of spin, the ball's just going to balloon up in the air, and it's just going to drop out of the sky, and it's not going to go anywhere. So if you hit a ball with a lot of spin, with the wind behind you, it's going to go forever, because that wind is going to push the ball, and the spin's going to keep it up in the air, and you're just going to hit it a mile. So that may be what you want to do on your drives, but not so much when you're hitting into the wind. So generally what I say is use less loft and actually choke down the club. So if, let's say, a situation would be you have 150 yards, you normally hit an 8-iron from that kind of distance. Well, if you're hitting into the wind, you may want to hit a lot more club, like a 6-iron, maybe it's a one club wind, and then you actually choke up on the club to keep it lower. So what that's going to do is that's going to take some loft off the club face so that it takes the spin off of there. The other thing that I'd recommend doing, if at all possible, is to try to hit the ball more up here in the more in the center of the face, or even higher, a little bit higher on the face. Because if you hit it low on the face, that's going to make the ball spin more as well. So, and that's going to make the ball balloon a lot more. So trying to hit it more in the center of the face or a little bit higher is going to help with that, if at all possible. You may be in a situation where it's a really tight fairway, and you're in the fairway, and you don't really have any choice but to hit it in these kind of lower grooves right here, even if you're getting some good forward shaftling, which there's nothing you can do about that. But just understand that you're going to have a little bit more spin on those shots, and it might take a little bit off of there. So that's basically what I'd recommend. Use less loft, choke down the club to give you a little bit more control. Don't ever, this is what I see a lot, is where people, because they're into the wind, instead of taking an extra club and using less loft, they'll swing harder with the more lofty club. And that's exactly what you don't want to do, because the harder you hit a ball, the more spin you're going to put on it. And then you're also going to have that added loft. So you're going to have a ton of spin. That ball ain't going to go anywhere. You're going to be much better off taking more of an easy swing and using less loft, so the ball will go further and will have less spin as well. Those are basically the adjustments that I make. Yeah, excuse me there. I had to cough real quick. All right. Let's go ahead and go on to the next one. Daryl K says, Q, what do you do if you've had a really bad round and mentally depleted and feel like staying away from the game for a while? How do you regain motivation? I guess the question is more about the mental aspect of the game. So first of all, what I do is I usually have a beer or a cocktail or something like that. That usually helps a little bit to drown your sorrows. The 19th hole is a good place to be after a tough round. Basically, I don't ever really get down about my game anymore. I guess it's just the way I approach it. It's a game, and you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. And that's basically what I do. If you enjoy it, if you don't enjoy it, then I don't see any reason to do it. I don't do things that I don't really enjoy. So that's kind of the way that I look at things. Now, if it was my job, it'd be something completely different. But Daryl, I assume you're not a professional golfer. But anyway, I would look at it as a game. You're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. I basically live by something that's called the 20-stroke rule. And, a lot of people have this thing and this understanding that you should always be shooting at or around your handicap. And that's just not the reality of what happens. You're going to shoot all over the place. Nobody is super consistent. Even tour players aren't really, really consistent. And what that 20-stroke rule means that look at any tour player. I imagine you could look at any tour player and you're going to see anywhere from probably 18 to 20 strokes between their best round in a season and their worst round in a season. Typically what you're going to see is, for every tour player, you're going to see their best round's going to be probably a mid to low 60s round. And then their worst round is going to be like an 80 to 84, 85, somewhere in there. That's going to be their worst round. You're thinking, well, 84, 85, how in the world are they shooting that? And you're not hearing about it because they're not in contention. You're only hearing about the tour players that are in contention in a tournament. You're not really hearing much about the tour players that are playing terrible and don't make the cut and things like that. So, and even the best players in the world, I look at the most example that I looked at because I had been talking about this with someone, and the number one player at the time was Dustin Johnson. His best round of the year was a 63, and then his worst round of the year was like an 81. So an 18-stroke difference. So if the number one player in the world can have an 18-stroke difference between his best and worst score, then why would I expect to be able to shoot consistently awesome all the time? So you're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. what you could do is you could also evaluate what went wrong. What was the problem on the course? So I would think about, wow, my short game really let me down today. I was chipping, I chipped terribly, and maybe I'd go to the range and I would work on that part of my game a little bit to get that back in order, to get that back. Because usually when you have a really, really bad round that's worse than you normally do, you did you did terrible on an element of your game or elements of your game that you don't normally do. And usually it just takes going to a range session to kind of get that back to where it was before. So let's say you went out and you really had trouble controlling your wedges. You would blade them, excuse me, you'd chunk them. Even when you did hit them solid, you had no distance control. So if that were the case, I would just go out to the range later that day, or later sometime after that before I played again, and I tried to get that worked out. Let's say it was maybe my driver. I just hit my driver all over the place. I couldn't control it. I was hitting out of bounds here and there. I would go to the range and I would try to work that out and get that fixed. So that's basically what it comes down to, is just working on the piece that was way worse than it normally is. And to get that, because usually it just takes working on that a little bit to get back to where you were, because you're doing it way worse than you were before. You already know you can do it better than what you did that day. But that's just kind of the way that I look at it. It's a game. It should be fun. And some days you're going to suck. And some days you're going to play awesome. Some days you're going to have where you shoot way below your normal scores. Like the tour player, Dustin Johnson, he doesn't always shoot a 63. He was on that day. He was dead on and shooting really well. I think he probably averaged like a 69 or a 68 or 67 or something like that year. So somewhere in that range. So that's basically what it comes down to, is understand that it's fun. Understand that you're not going to be consistent all the time. Have a beer and work on the piece of your game that was costing you the most strokes on the course. And then the next time you go out, you'll probably shoot a lot better. All right. So Andrew A says, please would demo start down and explain movements in right arm function. So basically what we're talking about in the start down is you should already have some momentum moving forward before you're starting down in the swing. And basically what your right arm, you want that to be coming into the body. So if that right arm, that elbow is kind of getting behind you when you're coming down, you're going to block shots. If that right elbow is kind of going out like this, you're going to come over the top. So you want that right elbow to kind of come into the side. It's almost like if I were to throw a ball, I would throw it like that, right? I wouldn't throw it. If I was trying to throw this ball straight that way, if I was trying to sidearm it, I would come in like that. So it would look something like that. I wouldn't throw it like this, and I wouldn't throw it like that. I would throw it like that. That's kind of the feeling that you want to have as you're coming through with the right arm. Clay actually just recently posted a video where he talked about the right arm and left arm movements. And basically, that's what I've talked about in office hours in the past. But with the right arm, it's definitely involved. If you're a right-handed golfer, it's definitely involved. And at the top of the swing, that's when it's really going to be involved. That's when you're going to feel a lot more pressure, because it's like you're taking it and you're throwing something. So it's releasing like that, and your left arm is going to get more involved to this point, because you have to hold on to the club, because your right hand's basically letting go as you're coming through. So I equate it to kind of throwing something as you're coming through, and that's going to help you to get that correct movement and function in the right arm. So working on that drill, that new video, the one arm drill that Clay talks about, those are going to be really good to help you get the proper function of the right arm as you're coming down. All right. So Lee J says, does poor weight shift cause chunking, staying too far back and not turning correctly? Yes. A poor weight shift is almost always the cause of a chunk shot, because what happens is when we swing this club, it's coming down, it reaches a low point, and then it goes back up. So if I'm coming down like this, I have no weight shift, and I kind of hang back, my low point kind of happens back here, back in my swing. So let me angle this down. So as I was saying, if I'm kind of hanging back, my low point is going to happen back here, Whereas if I get a good weight shift, now my low point is going to happen more in front of the golf ball, and that's where you want it. Because in order to get ball first contact, that low point needs to be in front of the golf ball, a few inches or a couple inches, or even at the golf ball, in order to get that ball first contact. If your low point is before the golf ball, that club's got to bottom out and then move back up. And typically, it's going to bottom out in the ground, and you're going to chunk the ball. Or it may bottom out, not hit the ground, and then be on its way up. And you'll end up with a thin or top shot. So that's what I would recommend is working on getting a better weight shift if you're struggling with chunking. If you go to the the Stop Chunking and Topping course on the website, that can help you to fix that. The Stop Chunking and Topping course, you can find that by clicking the house icon. That's going to take you to the homepage. That's at the top of the page, that little house icon. That's going to take you to the homepage. If you scroll about halfway down on that homepage, you'll see the Tuskegee Golf System course progress. You'll see all the courses there. It's about halfway down. You'll find that Stop Chunking and Topping. That course is all about getting loaded up properly. So not having, because a lot of people have this reverse weight shift where they kind of end up here. They're on their lead leg at the top of the swing, and then that makes them fall back in the downswing. So that's that reverse weight shift. So we want to make sure that you're not doing that. So we're talking about getting nice and loaded up. So getting everything loaded up on your trail side, and then getting that weight to transfer to your lead side so you can get that ball first contact, get that low point in front of the golf ball. So I would work on that course for sure. All right, so David C says, cures for yips on short putts. So with short putts, often what I see with people who have yips, and it's hard to say without seeing your swing, but you may want to look at this on camera, is that what people do is they take way too big of a backswing. So what they'll do to get the yips, essentially, is they'll have this short putt right here, and then for this short little putt, they'll bring the putter back like this far. And that's, if I do that, I've got to decelerate to get the ball in the hole. And that's where those yips come from, typically. So what I'd recommend doing is take some short strokes and really make sure that you accelerate through. So I maybe for this putt, I would go like that and really accelerate through there. And that's going to help me. That's an exaggeration, but that's going to help me get rid of those yips, because that's pretty much always where it comes from, is just I'm getting right here and I think, man, I don't know how to take a short enough stroke to be able to hit this putt. And I'm just going to end up taking a big stroke here, and then it ends up just being too much. And I can't make putts doing that. So I practice taking some really short strokes and really accelerating through there. So really short and accelerating through there. And that should help you out quite a bit with those yips. That's typically what I see. But I would give that a try as well. There's also plenty of other videos on the website. For the yips, I would just actually search the word yips, and you'll find plenty of other videos. But that's usually the main thing that I see. If that doesn't apply to you, now check out some of our other yips videos. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a little search box. If you go in there and search the word yips, you'll find plenty of other videos on putting as well. I think Robin's got a good video in there for the yips as well. So Andrew A says, do you aim the hands when towards the golf ball? Do you aim the hands when towards the golf ball? Andrew, I'm not really sure exactly what you're asking. If you wouldn't mind kind of rephrasing your question, I'm not really sure what that means. Do you aim the hands when toward the golf ball? I don't really aim my hands with anything. I aim the club face, basically, is what I do. So not sure if that answers your question, but yeah, I'm not sure exactly what that means. So David W says, hey, Q, feeling good enough with swing to think about short game on chips. After picking landing spot for distance, how do you assess slope of green to figure out how to get proper roll to the hole? So it's just like reading a green if you're reading a putt, right? So I would just kind of get behind where my pitch is and kind of look down, get down lower to the ground and see kind of the undulations in the green, what's going on there. And it's just like a putt. After that ball lands, what kind of break is in the green and things like that. So that's what I'd be looking at, reading it just like a putt You could do that. I like to do that with my feet as well. So I'll go up to where the landing spot is, close to where the landing spot is, and I'll kind of stand there with my feet and kind of feel the ground with my feet and feel, okay, is it sloped this way? Is it sloped this way? Is it kind of downhill, uphill, or anything like that? And I'll kind of feel that, and that'll give me a good assessment. That I actually like to walk around the hole as well. Excuse me, just kind of give me a sense for how long the chip is, and then you can kind of feel the slope as you're walking toward the hole as well, and feel if it's sloping to the right, to the left, uphill or downhill, and feel like, okay, maybe I need to adjust my landing spot to a little bit further up because it's more uphill, or maybe I should adjust it to further back because this actually drops off. It goes downhill. I just need to get it to the slope and let it feed down to the hole. Or maybe, wow, this really breaks more to the right than what it looks like because I can feel it in my feet, and you might aim a little bit more to the left. So it's really about the same way that you would read a putt. You just kind of get down behind it, see the slope of the green, and feel it in your feet, and that's just a good way to assess what's going on there. All right, so like I said, I'll be on here for about another 10 minutes, about 9 minutes or so, since we started late. I'll stay on here a little bit longer. If anybody's got any questions about swing reviews, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have there. Any questions about the clinics? We actually just opened up our November clinic today, I believe, to all of our All Access members. So if you're interested in coming to sunny Florida for a distance clinic, we'd be happy to have you. We actually had our first clinic. This is kind of what we call our clinic season right now because the weather is nice. It's beautiful right now. I mean, I think it was like 80 degrees or so yesterday. It's still a little bit warm right now, but once you get into November, man, it's going to be like perfect. It's going to be like 70 in the morning and maybe 80 in the afternoon at most. So it's going to be like beautiful. So that's the best time to be out in the range and working on your golf game for sure. So we actually just recently had a clinic a couple of weeks ago, and that was probably our best results that we've ever had. It was awesome. All the guys were really good, and we had an average increase of 13.7, I believe it was. So a great group of guys. We actually had a guy who's come for a second time and got more games the second time that he came. So it was a great time. Everybody came and did really, really well. So we'd love to have you come down and get some distance, and not just distance. If you got other questions as well, you get to ask those one-on-one, and any questions that you have for me and Robin, we'll be happy to help. So highly recommended distance clinic. It's a ton of fun. The weather is awesome over here in Florida, especially in that time of year in November. We do plan on having more in the future. And next year for sure. So be on the lookout for emails. If this year doesn't work out for you, November doesn't work out for you, we do plan on having more in the future. So feel free to ask any questions about those, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. But like I said, I'll stay on here for a little bit longer. Looks like we got a question here. All right, so Stephen B says, when you do sign up for a swing review, are you sending in videos, and what camera angles are you wanting? So so the swing review is all going to be video type of review. We use an app. It's called V1 Golf. You download it for your smartphone, and it's very, very easy to use. Really, you just video your swing with the app, and then we walk you through directions on how to send that to us. But basically, you send it to us within the app. You'll go and find Top Speed Golf in the academies, and then you'll select me as your instructor if you choose me or Robin. And then from there, I'll get it, and then within a business day or two, you'll get a response from me back. As far as the camera angles that we're looking for, we're typically just looking for a face-on view, which would be basically, where'd my club go? A face-on view would be this right here, a face-on view. And then we're also looking for a down-line view, which would be this right here. So swinging from down your toe line, essentially. That's what we're looking for. And really, depending on what you're wanting to work on or what we decide to work on is what club it would be. So if we're wanting to work through that 20-minute distance fix course, we're going to be using all driver, basically. If we're wanting to do some pitching. Maybe we'll do some wedges. And that's the other thing too. These swing reviews, it's not just limited to the full swing. If you are having trouble with your putting, I'll be happy to take a look at that. If you're having trouble with your pitching, your chipping, bunker shots, whatever it may be, we can take a look at all these things and make sure that you're looking good on camera there. So be happy to work with you. Like I said, I believe I do have some spots available. If I don't have spots available, if they are taken before you have a chance to get there, go ahead and join my waiting list. And as soon as I get an opening, I will let you know, and you can sign up at that time. So feel free to ask any more questions about the Unlimited Swing Review Program, the Distance Clinic. I'll be happy to help with that. And obviously, if you have any golf instruction questions, we got another 5 minutes on here. So I'll stay on here till 10:15, and we'll get those questions answered. All right, just making sure there are no questions here. All right. So we got a few more minutes here. Go ahead and post any last minute questions you have. We'll be back on here, or I'll be back on here tomorrow. Tomorrow is, wow, it's already Wednesday. So tomorrow is Thursday. So tomorrow will be in the afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern time. If you'd like to join me at that time to get your questions answered. Any apps for GoPro? I'm not sure. I don't know if you can use your GoPro for really the easiest way to film your swing is with your phone. I imagine you could film your swing with a GoPro as well, but you would have to find a way to get the video on the app, and I don't really know of a way to do that. I assume you could just plug in your phone and put it in your camera roll. I mean, that seems like a lot of work. It's going to be way, way easier to use your phone camera and just directly from there. That's our videos that we have that walk you through how to do it. It's that's basically what we're doing there is we're using the phone app, and really the camera on your phone is going to be pretty good. It's going to be good enough to, and in fact, most cameras are probably better than a GoPro camera, I would imagine. The iPhone camera is awesome. Pretty much any of the Samsung phones, especially the newer ones, they all have awesome cameras. The Pixel phone, that's what I have, awesome camera. So they all take good enough. Even the ones that don't have great cameras on them, they're usually 30 frames per second. They're still going to be completely fine to be able to get your swings on there. So I don't need a perfectly high def video or anything like that. Really 30 frames per second, even if it's grainy, I'm going to be able to hopefully be able to see what's going on there. But typically, if you're using an iPhone, I usually always get great video from those. It's slow motion and it's awesome. So, and any of the Samsung phones typically have really good video as well as the Pixel one. So I'm sure there's a lot of other great cameras out there as well that I'm not naming, but basically your smartphone is going to be much, much easier than trying to use a GoPro, trying to take the videos and put them on your phone and then send them. That just seems like a lot of hassle to do that. But those GoPro cameras, those are pretty cool. I do like those. I don't have one, but they are pretty neat. So we got another minute on here. If you got any last second questions, I'll be happy to answer them. If not, we'll go ahead and sign off of here. So I'll give you another 30 seconds or so to ask a question. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there for today. And we'll be back here tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern time to answer your questions again. right. Well, if there aren't any questions, I'll go ahead and sign off of here. Thanks everybody for joining me today. Again, I'll be back here tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern time to answer your questions. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you next time.